I moved to Japan for my art, and this is what it looked like. I think my connection to Japan, other than the abundance of sensational nature and their full expressions of the seasons, would have to be the conviction that art strives to meet truth and beauty. With the beginnings in Buddhism, tea ceremony, mindfulness, tea bowls, and raku firing, the Japanese express their inner lives, their spiritual connections, and the pursuit of truth and beauty, as do I. My entire art practice was birthed from a very similar philosophy. I was drawn to come here not only for its diversity in art and pottery classes, but for its deep history and rich culture in ceramics. I moved to Japan to dissolve into an artist's way of life, to live it, breathe it, and let it shape me, to let art become my daily language. I designed this journey to be personal, but flexible enough to carry me away. I chose to self-drive this residency and at the same time be open enough to see where it takes me. In the classes and mentoring aspects of this time, my teachers taught me ancient and modern techniques I hadn't seen or done before. I learnt about effect and efficiency, slow, mindful, efficient practices versus rigid physical ones. I observed this in classes, from the positions of elbows and hands while pulling up clay, to how to use your body when spiral wedging, and slip rather than water when throwing. They taught me why to use fingertips rather than knuckles, because fingertip nerves can feel for depth and thickness of the clay. In Japan, this approach is called yugi. It refers to a profound, mysterious, yet subtle grace that is felt rather than explicitly shown. It is about the unspoken depths of art, often associated with Noh theatre and ink painting, and, of course, wabi-sabi, experiencing life through senses rather than through intellectual analysis. I've learnt here that pottery isn't something that people do, it's something they live inside of. I learnt about lineage and place and respect. It's not just learning a skill, but stepping into something that has been carried through generations. Moving to a different country like this, I have had to learn everything from scratch. It's like starting over, and it has transformed me from the inside. Moving into a new and different world gives new perspective and life, and it's this power of transformation that has had the biggest impact on my creative mind. The creative community here has been so warm and welcoming and generous. Here in Mashiko, I learnt and did things I never thought I would. Being part of this Nobori-gama firing was one of the highlights of the journey. Kawajiri-san used these tiny little vases to test out his firings. We stayed in his residency in Mashiko, and it was one of the best experiences I've had there so far. The firing went for 5 days. There were over 2,000 pieces of pottery in this firing, and it was really great to be part of taking on some of the shifts and watching the community through the day and the nights. I was lucky to stay in Kawajiri-san's renovated kiln residency, and here I was learning the ancient Korean technique called ongi, a very physical form of hand building that I got to experience and had a few attempts myself with a lot of help. It was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, some of the things I built were too big to bring home, so this is what I had to do. I took much downtime in between classes and firing the Nobori-gama to get on with some painting. For me to get the most out of my time, painting became an easy way for me to create and document my journey on the move. I was mostly inspired by nature, the meal layouts, temples, and experiences. Most evenings I would collect my findings and write or paint and journal. Even the little things like this basket of slippers. Having read Bernard Leach's book, A Potter in Japan, and carried it with me on my journey, I romanticized his stories with Kawai Kanjiro and Shoji Hamada. Visiting their homes and following their paths was how I decided on where I would be spending most of my time and staying. When I visited these spaces, I was always transported to another time. I recreated their stories in my mind when I walked through their rooms and studios. Kawai-san says, "We do not work alone. Man can make a bowl of clay. He can make it round and smooth, but until it is fired, it cannot be used. Man can lay the fire and light the flame, but still it is the fire itself that really completes the bowl. And that fire is something bigger and more wonderful than any man." "No, we do not work alone," he said. His words roamed around my mind when I visited his Noborigama. I saw the ash glazes splashed on the walls on the inside, reminding me of what he said about nature and making glazes. He said, "But I returned to nature, to the science that precedes all science, and the return to nature was my salvation." I saw this process in Besenware. People here don't use glaze. The clay here is iron-rich, and ash and charcoal is thrown into the Noborigama at the highest point to seal the pottery. Again, these artists work with nature, not against it. One of my goals with the residency was to visit as many ancient kilns as I could, and over this time I visited approximately 15 of them. The more time I spent here, I noticed myself to really settle in. My daily life became moments of observation. The tiny nooks and bakeries that sold bagels with cream cheese and yam, the chestnut trees, the red-breasted woodpecker, the walk through town that took me to the pottery every day, past the antique store full of ancient treasures where the roads and speckled with broken pieces of pottery. There was a wonder wherever I went, and my eyes were wide open to all of it. The Japanese Zen masters call this Shoshin, the beginner's mind. A practice in approaching everything with an open, curious mind as if you were experiencing it for the first time. On one of my walks, I found this edible jelly bracket wood ear mushroom. That was one of those curious moments I observed. It is common for Japanese potters to paint what they see outside their studio: weeds, grasses, and local trees or flowers or rice fields. So when you walk around Mashiko's fields, you're often looking at the same plants that appear on bowls and dishes, putting the art of observation to practice. As the months moved on, within all the artists' open nights, the exhibitions, classes, artists I met, and New World experiences, I found myself as an artist here. I felt seen, heard, and understood in this world more than I have ever before. I realized I just want to create truthfully, without attachment to perfection, regardless of beauty, and where my eyes are always open to curiosity. As time moved on and I found myself out in the forest with the monks, I felt as if my entire nervous system had been reset. My negative inner voice has almost disappeared. A great thing about coming to another country to learn about art is probably the people that I met along the way and how inspiring they were, watching their processes, learning about how they run studios and where their inspiration comes from. And it wasn't just all pottery. I met musicians, sculptors, jewelry makers, glass blowers, writers, poets. The ideation phase of my trip gave me plenty of quiet downtime to read, map out future creative projects, and write poetry and field notes of Japanese plants. And I wrote this in my journal. Dandelions love the Japanese climate. I find myself constantly getting down low, stopping and admiring them. Huge, deep green leaves with their lion teeth, full golden yellow flower bursting, and the fluffiest, roundest dandelion blowball. I seem to find the child in me come out every time I find a clock. During Sakura season, we celebrated with Hanami, with sake and poetry. My name is Sakura. I'm tall and old and bent on one side. But when the snow melts and the sun returns, I stretch out little by little, allowing his warm, gentle kiss to soften my dry, broken skin. Something awakens with his embrace. It lifts the loneliness of winter, and my heart starts to flutter. It bursts of dusty pink blossoms. It fills the air with a scent of sweet honey. I open and share in Hanami under the light. I am not alone now. I am renewed. But as the night creeps in, this fleeting moment of life does not last. I bloom only once in this year, before my shyness returns, and like dusty moth wings in the breeze, my delicate, translucent petals float away with the next exhale. But don't worry, I will leave you the remnants of this love in pink-covered paths, and we shall meet in the same place at the same time next year to share our love once again. Will you join us? Universally, the colour green symbolises nature, vitality, health and renewal. It invokes groundness and calm and balance and harmony, and I definitely felt that being surrounded by matcha green valleys and deep green fields in the last part of my journey here gifted me with all these beautiful traits. It was so inspiring that the word green is the name of my next collection of works. Having this opportunity to be a travelling creative made me become a little bit more creative in my use of tools. I discovered new ways of drawing with ink and bamboo sticks and really enjoyed and discovered just black ink line drawing. And that is the end of my self-driven residency to Japan. Thanks for joining me and coming along.